So this chapter was about individuals with emotional and behavior disorders. So we're just gonna dive right on into some of the interesting facts I found. So I found that there's four dimensions of behavior disorders. There's the frequency of which it occurs, the intensity, the duration, and the age appropriateness. When I think about disorders or like behavioral, I never really think about like how often they happen. I just kind of see them happen or see them at a certain intensity. Don't know that there's different kinds, um, and then for how long, obviously. So like those are cool to see that they've put them into like categories and they have different levels of those categories. Um, Another thing that I was reading about was Tourette's syndrome. Um, it is like motor tics and uncontrollable verbal outbursts. Um, I knew about this in high school, and I always thought it was a cool thing because like you kind of have like this little cool thing about yourself. But thinking about it now, looking at it now after reading about it, honestly it's terrible because they have no control over it, and that it interferes with their day to day life. Another thing I found is that the current research suggests that children with emotional or behavioral disorders rarely exhibit one dimension of the four dimensions. They have usually two or more of them. So there's either frequency, it's very frequent and it's really long, or it's very intense and long, and it's not very often. So that was cool to read about. Another thing is that this behavioral and emotional, I found that it's kind of a recent thing. It's not like it's been around for like 50 years or something like that, which I would think because obviously people had emotional issues and behavioral issues back in the day too. So it's very interesting to see that it's only starting now to become more relevant and on the rise. I also read that like it's biological. It's growing more, like it's more a biological thing, which I've always thought was. I didn't think it was. I thought it was more environmental, where like what environment you were in, it causes this. So that was very interesting to read about. And then a question that I have is, um, it's more for just your opinion because you know more about the subject. I only had like a 4-day burst of the information, and you probably have years looking into this. And so my question is, in the text they're talking about education for people who have behavioral and emotional problems, like putting them in separate schools or in with public schools. And I just wanted to know, like, what is your opinion, like, as a scholarly person who has looked into this, like, what is your thoughts? Do you think they should be with the rest of this population, or do they need to be segregated to their own schools where they can be specially taught? And so I was just curious as to what you had to tell me about. And then another thing that I found that applies to those who are emotionally and have behavioral issues, but it can also apply to anyone really, is the FAST, FAST, which is F is freeze and think, A is look for the alternatives, S is solution, and then evaluation, and then T is try it slowly and carefully. Like thinking about that with any situation in life that can apply to us, and it obviously like with them, like to stop, slow down for a second to look at what's happening could really help them. So I thought that was the coolest thing in the entire chapter because it applies to me, can apply to anybody.